Good afternoon. I wanted to take this opportunity to kind of go over a few of the stories that we've been reading, along with just a quick explanation of the fantastic for those of you who are kind of still in the dark. So I want to start off with week one. Week one, we started off with, even though this class is American Lit from 1865 to the present, I wanted to give you guys a historical context of the American Gothic and some of the prevalent writers during that time. So I wanted to start off with Edgar Allan Poe and Nathaniel Hawthorne. And the reason why I wanted to start off with these stories were because they are American Gothic stories, and American Gothic ties in so perfectly with the fantastic. Now, this concept of the fantastic is a very broad term, okay? The fantastic has been used to describe a specific literary genre that might have supernatural elements, magical realist elements. The fantastic has also been used as a framework to analyze literature. So, for example, when we were talking about the climactic moment in Edgar Allan Poe's The Telltale Heart, um, in terms of analyzing literature through the framework of the fantastic, what the fantastic does, it's that moment at when the reality for the character and the reader is compromised. So as a reader of a story, we go into a story and we have our preconceived notions of reality. We know what it means to live, we know what it means to die, we know what it means to experience pain, we know what it means to experience love. So there's this point at when the author is able to compromise your perception of reality, and you as the reader make a choice to accept that reality for the sake of the story. So one of the more contemporary pop cultural examples that I like to use is one of my favorite films known as Nightmare on Elm Street. So I have a preconceived notion of what dreaming is, what happens in dreams based off of my experience. So there's this point when the monster is introduced in the story for the first time, and the concept of you being able to die in your dream becomes the reality for you as the onlooker of that film for the sake of the film. So once the film is over, you go back into your world of reality. Okay, so for that time when you're watching the film or you're reading this story about this monster killing people in their dreams, your preconceived notion of reality is compromised for that moment. So when we think about the fantastic in terms of the literature that we're reading this semester, I want you as the reader to think to yourself, where is this moment or this first fantastic moment in which I have to compromise my concept of reality for the sake of this story? So one of the examples, or one of the good examples that we're reading this semester would be Von Gutt's Slaughterhouse-Five. So there's this point, the first point when Billy Pilgrim becomes unstuck in time, where you, the reader, have to accept this concept of time travel as a reality for the character. So when you think about the fantastic, I want you to think about that in those terms at this point when we think about Slaughterhouse-Five, when we think about Edgar Allan Poe's The Telltale Heart, when we think about young Goodman Brown. And that was one of the reasons why I asked you all that question. Is young Goodman Brown experiencing this for real, or is he dreaming this? And just the idea of us having this conversation is an example of the fantastic at work in the American Gothic. So the reason why I chose Poe and Hawthorne was to kind of give us this historical understanding of Puritanism, give us this understanding of Poe coming from Virginia in the mid 1800s, Nathaniel Hawthorne giving this concept of American ideology from the mid 1800s from the Northeast. And how do these authors use the Gothic to kind of present some of these fantastic elements? And what are they essentially saying about our culture? So it's these points of us compromising our sense of reality. It's almost kind of like these empty spaces, and it's almost kind of like this idea of what we were talking about in the first discussion board as circuit lies. Is this idea of ambiguity, to where the author is kind of presenting this interpretation or this open interpretation, or causing us to challenge our preconceived notion of America, and then us to kind of fill in those empty spaces. So essentially, the fantastic does that. So I want you to think about that as we read along with the stories this semester. Feel free to go back and read A Telltale Heart, and read Young Goodman Brown again, and try to be more conscious of some of those moments, to where you, as the reader, are forced to are forced to reconceive your already preconceived reality of American culture.